to break my fast on honeydew and drink the milk of paradise. That's right, folks, strap yourself in. It's a video essay from yours truly. I haven't done one of these in a while. I always like to do at least one a year because I just enjoy doing them. I want to start off by saying that we're going to be looking at a property that I love a lot. Sometimes despite the flaws that it has. Like, I can come to an item and realize, yeah, it's not perfect, but we all have our biases, and this just happens to be one of mine. I love this property. It's nowhere near perfect, and part of the reason that I love it is because it is not perfect. So allow me to indulge myself in this. The years between 1979 and 1981 saw a lot of changes within the cultural zeitgeist. Prog rock was pretty much all but dead outside of like a couple albums here and there, and synthwave was beginning to really take hold. And the movies were a little strange. It was a very unique time for music, and a just as equally strange and unique time for movies. The Blues Brothers introduced many to R&B and soul through two white guys from SNL, and fame just hit the theaters. Popeye was considered a musical for whatever that's worth.
Oh, my hero!
But there was one movie amongst all of these that stood out from the crowd. It took all the camp and all the fun and all the bonkers ideas from all that list and then cranked it up to leg warmers and roller skates. Part 1. What is a Xanadu? So a little bit of history and context. It was inspired by the 1941 Rita Hayworth film Down to Earth. The 1980s Xanadu was written by Richard Christian Danus and Mark Reed Rubble. It was directed by Robert Greenwald and starred Olivia Newton-John, Michael Beck. For those of you that don't know, he played Swan in The Warriors.
I'll bet this later, huh?
And the last official performance by the late great Gene Kelly. Yep, that Gene Kelly. It also had music written and performed by Olivia Newton-John, as well as Electric Light Orchestra. It was a little bit of a strange pairing for the soundtrack, but let me tell you, that soundtrack slaps.
A place where nobody dared to go.
The movie musical plot, at least, revolves around Michael's character of Sonny, who is daring to dream. He has a I Want song where he's fed up of painting blown up record covers for billboards, and he just wants more out of life. After a run-in with a literal Greek muse,
Say, you think we could,
See each other again?
yeah.
played by Newton-John, by the name of Kira, he teams up with Danny, played by Kelly, to turn a rundown building into a cathedral of I almost said crustacean. A cathedral of creation. Although now that I come to think of it, a cathedral of crustacean might be a lot of fun as well. Sonny wants to open up a roller rink, and Danny wants to prove to the world that the big bands of the 40s aren't dead and can flourish. Seeing the same drive Danny once had in Sonny and the same affection he had for that same Greek muse, the two team up over their love for this woman and their desire to create, to build the ultimate nightclub, a big band neo-plastered roller rink. And that's pretty much the plot of the film. But as with any cult classic of so bad it's good film, the plot is only one facet of this diamond. There's also a lot of scenes in here that are just completely buck wild. There's a fully animated sequence where the two lead characters turn into fish and, you know, they're still wearing leg warmers as a fish, and the dance sequences and the set designs and the whole 9 yards are just really something to be marveled at. And even with all this, the movie didn't do very well. Upon release, it was not a success. It was a flop, barely making back its budget. It received massive negative reviews from critics and viewers alike, and it's been reported that this movie was one of the main inspirations for the Golden Raspberry Award. And a big factor of the legacy of this film is due in part largely to the soundtrack. As I mentioned earlier, it slaps. It's got banger after banger, both from Newton-John and ELO. My favorite tracks being I'm Alive, Don't Walk Away, and of course the title track of Xanadu that ends the whole movie off, and damn is it catchy.
A place where nobody dared to go.
Part 2. So why was it so bad? If the flat yet convoluted plot is strange enough and the scenes that kind of circulate this didn't put enough people off, the cards were still stacked against this film. There were other factors that plagued it pretty severely. The most glaring one is the cinematography by Victor J. Kemper. He left a lot to the imagination. Quite literally, he filmed at eye level, and most of the sequences, you can only see the front row of the people. You couldn't see any of the many back dancers. You could really only see their arms and legs as they were doing this. There was a reason why the stage show of Starlight Express, the Andrew Lloyd Webber film that also took place on roller skates and danced, was as weirdly constructed as it was, so a viewing audience could see all the intricate and dimensioned dance sequences that had around it. I mean, the stage was also shaped that way so people could, roller skate on it. But this is even more of a travesty when you apply it to a movie, because you have complete control over where you put your visual point of reference for the audience. When you're filming a large group of people, it's best if you film from high angles so you can see the whole cast. Think of massive battle sequences from Lord of the Rings. When you want to showcase a full scope of the army, you film at a high angle and point down. When you want to get in close, this is when you go for the eye level so you can show those within the battle and what they're seeing. As I mentioned, the audience in Xanadu can only see that front line and some of the arms and the legs that are off doing their own thing. And this was even more of a tragedy. I've already said this, but it's even more so when you factor in Kenny Ortega being the main choreographer of this. He had some great flows and some amazing dance sequences that get lost in the shuffle. It's all but lost due to poor camera angles and placements. But there are other factors outside of this poor placement of cameras that make the movie not the greatest. The acting is...
You paint beautifully.
This is the first time I've cared about what I painted in a long time.
It's not such a crazy idea. You've got a good eye.
That's what he said.
It isn't great. It's not good. Michael is pretty flat, and his whole performance, pretty much from beginning to end, was less than stellar. There's probably a good reason why Michael Beck isn't a household name like Olivia Newton-John or Gene Kelly. And while we're talking about Gene Kelly, the man can act, the man can dance, and he actually choreographed? He created a lot of his dance sequences himself.
Suddenly I'm where you are. You better never stay, 'cause I'll never be far away.
And Olivia Newton-John's accent, it's not great either.
I'm sorry if I disturbed you. I tried to be quiet.
How long have you been standing there?
Just a few seconds. Shall I go?
Oh, no, stay.
So, with all these things stacked against the film, why do I love it so much? Well, I'm glad you asked. Part 3. Why do I love it? So this is just a little bit of an aside before we get into the meat and potatoes of this section. I love a good train wreck. Bad album, I'm here for that. Bad movie, I gotta see it. Which is really odd because I also hate cringe humor. So, I love to see an amazing train wreck and people just being completely oblivious of how bad something is.
Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
While also hating when other people are a part of that and being put in an awkward situation. Which, now that I kind of think about it, makes a lot of sense, and I'll dive into a little bit more why later on in this whole video. But part of this love of a dumpster fire, it shows you through example of why certain techniques don't work. Some experiments can only show you the results after you perform them, and those results can be gloriously bad.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
I also love this movie because of how much fun it is and just how insane it is. There are so many times somebody could have said, well, let's think about this scene and how we're going to portray it on film before they actually sat down and filmed it. But instead, they just doubled down on this strangeness and were like, nah, let's just try it. Let's just give it a go. Honestly, part of this is why I love it so much. One of the main reasons why I love it and why I love a good dumpster fire of a bad movie is how genuine, how sincere, how innocent, and how all in it really is. One of the main themes of this movie is a dream doesn't die when the inspiration loses you or leaves you. Dreams die when you let them go, or when you let them die. The beginning of the third act of this film is set up when Kira leaves Sunny as she did with Danny. It's the repeating cycle that's being brought to fruition. Sunny is so distraught that he is about to give up. This is when Danny comes in and says, don't let this dream that we both have die. I let it die the first time, and that's what really killed it. We need to see this to fruition. The inspiration may be gone, but you're still here and we can see it through. And so the movie, instead of just opening up the big Xanadu dance roller rink, Sunny decides to double down and bring Kira back from Mount Olympus. The unabashedly wholesome and unironic sincerity of it all is what I love. There isn't a shred of cynicism in this movie. Everything is 100% genuine and earnest. And honestly, it's a huge breath of fresh air that we've had from media for the past 20 to 30 years. When we showcase media of how people following their dreams or muses, there's always this emphasis of the cost, or what we have to give up in order to meet our dreams, or how cynical whatever the enterprise may be.
So here we are.
Magdalene Rose put out a brilliant video discussing how we used to criticize and make people embarrassed for genuinely enjoying something, and most of those people are ourselves, and why we don't allow ourselves to really enjoy the things that we love. You should check it out. I've left the link up here to do so because it touches upon a lot of the same themes that I'm exploring here. So I want to spend a little bit of time examining and exploring the demonization of sincerity and the cost of dreams, as it does lend itself to the major point of this whole thing that I'm trying to do here. So for comparison, let's look at a very popular movie that does something very similar in the general theme of Xanadu, that of chasing after your dreams and the muses that help you achieve it, through a movie that was released just a few years ago, the 2016 masterpiece of La La Land. The movie shows us two individuals chasing after their own dreams. Seb with his jazz bar, similar to Sunny and his roller rink, and Mia with her acting career. They both see the world as rejecting their dreams through failed auditions or taking crappy jobs that they hate just to pay the bills. And how they have to rely on one another for support during this hard time.
'Cause all that I need's that crazy feeling I got.
When they both have the opportunity to get what they want out of their dreams, the movie makes them sacrifice that very meaningful relationship that they've developed together.
Because when you get this,
If I get this.
when you get this, you gotta give it everything you got. Everything.
The general theme of La La Land really does come down to what's the cost of your dream, and are you willing to pay for it? Xanadu, in contrast, doesn't have any of that. In fact, it actively acts against the idea of a dream having a cost. When Kira leaves, which is the cost, Sunny literally runs into a brick wall to get her back to convince the muses and the literal deity of Zeus to let Kira realize her own dreams. It's very Orpheus and Eurydice without the turning around part. Part 4, the Broadway show. So, this has all been a little bit of preamble for the meat and potatoes of this, the Broadway show. And this isn't even the first play by the name of Xanadu. The first one was a 1953 play called Xanadu, the Marco Polo musical. I haven't seen it, and it was just a really interesting fact that I found. But we're specifically looking at the 2007 musical with the book done by Douglas Carter Bean. I think it's Bean, might be Bain. And the music by John Farah with the man behind ELO himself, Jeff Lynne. And it honestly was pretty successful. I mean, it was more successful than the film was in that it won a bunch of awards, such as the Outer Critics Circle Award for Best Musical and a Drama Desk Award for Best Book. It even was nominated for a couple Tonys, such as Best Musical and Best Book. It lost to Spring Awakening for both of those categories, but let's actually put a pin in that because I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this a little bit later on. The plot is essentially the exact same as the film. Sunny is still the dreamer that he is, but a little bit more of a himbo rather than a disgruntled surfer artist. And Kira is a little bit more ditzy, a little bit more airheaded, but still a Greek muse that comes down to inspire Sunny. And Danny is still there to revamp an old building into a roller rink dance fantastical thing. Now, there are still a few things that the musical changes, which we'll get into in a bit. The major change that I want to kind of put into people's minds at the moment, and this is one of the biggest flaws, and I think one of the big things that the show got wrong, is they changed what the movie presented, which was a modern fantasy musical, into a straight up comedy. And that's really where things start to go off the rails.
You have to believe we are magic. Don't let your
Part 5, what Broadway did right. Before I get into what the Broadway show did wrong and how it did the big done dirty, I want to talk a little bit about what the show did get right. They really leaned into the camp. There's a lot of camp in the film, and so there's a lot to mine and generate material from. And they also added a few songs from the ELO discography. Evil Woman and Strange Magic make an appearance on here, but again, we're going to just put a little bit of a pin in that one as we'll bring that up in a second. And the stage itself was actually kind of interesting. There were small sections on either side of the stage where audience sat and participated in it. And I wonder if it was perhaps to emulate the movie's cinematography where everything was shot at eye level. Really, that's about it. Let's talk about what we really came here for. Part 6, what Broadway did wrong. Okay, so first off, I don't completely blame Broadway for treating Xanadu the way that they did. 1980 was a vastly different time than 2000. Oh boy, I'm trying to talk through a burp.
I've been talking through burps?
1980 was a vastly different time than 2007. For context, movies from the 1980 were like this. And in 2008, we would get movies like this.
He turns to me and he says, "Why so serious?"
So I get the need for an update. I get that the audience are very, very different. And there were also other changes that they put into the movie as well. They added 2 characters to play as antagonists to Kira, which are 2 of her sisters, because reasons, I guess? See, the original film of Xanadu didn't need an antagonist. It's another reason why I love the film. The main source of tension was the dynamic and complex environmental factors and internal factors. Sonny's own self-doubt, the competing ideologies between Danny's 1940 revivalisms of the big band era with Sonny's embrace and enthusiasm with the neo rock and roll roller skates of the now. The conflict of Kira only being on Earth for a limited time before having to go back to Mount Olympus, and once she's gone, getting her back. The real antagonist of the film was independent external factors working against the leads, and it provides that tension, as well as internal factors that allow the character to grow and continue their journey. But for the Broadway show, they're like, nah, man, nah, we're gonna go for two jealous, conniving sisters, very similar to the evil stepsisters from like those family-friendly Cinderella shows, just to cause chaos. This removes most of the dynamic features for Kira's character and also makes a lot of those internal antagonistic factors a lot more of, well, we just need to defeat the bad guys. And admittedly, I will say it's better for setting up jokes as it is more of a comedy in that sense, but all of the jokes really do fall flat, and it's all of the easiest of easy jokes that you can do for. But let's take some of those. We've already taken out the sisters, and I mean the sisters sang "Evil Woman," and it was not good. Like, it's played for laughs, and it's just, yeah, no. So we took out one of the pins. Let's take out that other pin of Spring Awakening and talk about that a little quickly, because it's got some things that I want to talk about. Spring Awakening is based off of the 1891 German play by the same name by Franz, I'm going to try this, Wedekind. I think it's Wedekind. The show is about teenagers who discover themselves and all the teenage angst that comes with it, all the sexy fun times that comes with it, and the consequences of all of it. So basically, it's rent set about 10 years earlier in the kids' lives, and everybody dies at the end. And so we have Spring Awakening with tracks like The Bitch of Living, The Dark I Know Well, and Totally Fucked. It's the bitch of living, with nothing going on. Paired with a little bit of the contrast of Xanadu's I'm Alive, All Over the World, and I'm Free.
Seems like forever.
You know, it really does say something about the cultural zeitgeist when you have Spring Awakening being touted and winning all the awards, and you have Xanadu that's basically being made fun of. Completely side note, I know I'm harping on Spring Awakening, and it's kind of all in good fun. Spring Awakening really is the superior show in pretty much every single way that the Broadway Xanadu show is not. It's potent, it's raw, it's visceral, it's extremely well done, and the entire cast of the original recording were of the age of the people that they were portraying, for the most part, so it has a lot of real talent in there. Okay, that's all I just wanted to say. It's a great show. If you haven't seen it already, please go and do it. Okay, so let's just switch the gears a little bit. Let's try something a little bit different. I want to spend a little bit more time looking at some of the other media of the day of 2007, just to showcase what I'm trying to get at, what I'm trying to say about all this. In the same year, we got movie musicals such as Across the Universe and Enchanted, and movie adaptations of Sweeney Todd and Hairspray. All of these had moments of darkness and how one needs to sacrifice their dreams to get what they want. But let's also look at one of the movie musicals in specific, because it does pair very well with what I'm trying to get at. It's kind of fun, and it is all for the whole family. Enchanted is a great example of what people were willing to tolerate for their movie musicals at the time, with a lot of cynicism to the fantastic and the joyful.
People looking. Don't sit. It's okay. You know, let's just walk. Can we walk?
Robert, played by Dr. McDreamy, is constantly trying to reel in Giselle, played by the national treasure that is Amy Adams, over her overabundance of enthusiasm and charm. To add another layer on this and to kind of paint the point home, the movie plays Prince Edward, played by Cyclops and James Marsden, for the major comedic character. A lot of his scenes show his overenthusiasm and childlike wonder as being played for gags over him being an idiot. This all solidifies and culminates when Edward meets back with Giselle. He is played for a fool, singing and dancing around the apartment.
Dreaming of a true love's kiss.
He sings too.
When he stops and awaits for Giselle to take up the song where he left off,
yes, somewhere there's a maid I've never met who was made.
She can't, due to her time in the real world. She can no longer sing his reprise.
To finish.
What's wrong?
You're not singing.
Oh. I'm not.
In the end, Robert does sing a little bit. To show how Giselle has taught him the importance of love, being true to yourself, and not letting yourself be inhibited. But the movie never really leans into the fact that it's alright to be whimsical, innocent, and enthusiastic about anything. You're only allowed to do it at a very intimate moment where only one person can see and hear you. Those individuals who showcase enthusiasm in public for all to see should be laughed and balked at. This is the exact same thing that the Broadway musical did to the movie musical. It took a very innocent, enthusiastic, and charming message and pointed their finger at it and laughed at it. Now don't get me wrong, the movie Xanadu is hilarious. There are several instances that I flat out howl with laughter. I will never not laugh when Sonny runs headfirst into a brick wall, all in his fit of passion to save Kira. The acting is very stilted in a way that so many other great bad films are. I will never not be infuriated when Victor's choice of cinematography blots out half of the cast. It's such a simple thing, you guys. You just need to take the camera and move it a little bit higher. Xanadu really is one of those so bad it's good movies where everybody is oblivious to how over the top it is. It's one of my favorite aspects of the film. It's what makes the movie so rewatchable. I will never get tired of watching this film, flaws included. But once the property became self-aware and realized how ridiculous it all was, and started to become in the joke with it, it was no longer fun, and I think that's where this cringe humor, it really turns me off. It's like when you make a stupid mistake and it's far too late to change course and backtrack, and everybody's starting to point and laugh. Instead of saying, okay, yeah, I did wrong, okay, laughs on me, let's move on, you turn it in on itself and say, oh, no, I meant to do that. I was in on the joke the whole time, and then continue to do whatever that stupid thing was as part of a joke. That's the point where it stops being funny and it just becomes uncomfortable. It really undermines the initial message that the movie had as well. It's mocking the original ideas. The original message of go onward, embrace your enthusiasm, chase that muse to wherever it leads, and never be afraid of who you are, is now replaced with those who are innocent and enthusiastically chase after their dreams deserve to be mocked and shamed. We not only see this in the messaging of the Broadway show of Xanadu, but also in Enchanted as well. Part 7, Conclusion. So what does this all mean? Really, at the end of the day, not a whole lot. I think I'm just really disappointed with what they could have done. They had such a big chance to maybe not fix some of the problems of the movie, because some of those problems are what makes the movie so wholesome, but elevate the material from the movie to the next level in a stage show. They had the opportunity to really stage a dynamic roller skate musical, maybe to the less of the disaster that Starlight Express was, but at least learn from it. They could have showcased Kenny Ortega's original choreography and allowed it to shine. They could have shown how a musical stage show on roller skates could be done properly and not a massive disaster. But instead, they went for the easy way out, and I'm never a fan of when anything takes the easy way out. Whether you like the original 1980s movie or not, you have to admit that at least the movie had a lot of heart and sincerity that the stage show essentially took out and made fun of. And instead, they filled it with cynicism. I'd rather have art that showcases the hopeful dreamers in a positive light rather than showcasing them as something to be mocked and scorned for. And that's about it. That's my little take on this whole thing. Thank you so much for watching. I always love doing these little bit more of a deep dive into any kind of property. I usually do music reviews, so whenever I'm allowed to kind of stretch my legs and really analyze property, I really enjoy myself. I already did one for both our actual musicals. I did one for the Lorax and why I like this song Biggering more than How Bad Can It Be? And I also did one for the scores of the 1980s film of Legend, where there are two scores, one from Jerry Goldsworth and one, or Jerry Goldstein, and one from Tangerine Dream. So this just allowed me to kind of, do another one. So that's what I've got. What did you guys think? Have you seen Xanadu the film and do you love it? Have you seen the Broadway show and did you connect with it at all? How were my points in this? It was just kind of a fun little ragtime thing. And that's kind of all I've got for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.